So John, thank you very much for making time to share your insights into the future of leadership.
Thank you very much for having me on.
But before we go into leadership, can you tell us a little bit about your journey? Where did you grow up?
I was born in Swaziland and lived in Swaziland till I was 12 years old, and then moved to Johannesburg.
Right.
I lived in Johannesburg till I was 21, and then lived in London for 3 years, and then lived in Cape Town for 3 years, then back in Joburg, and now back in Cape Town over the last 6 years.
So what was your dream career as you grew up?
While I was growing up, being an Olympic athlete, so I was really into watching the Olympics, and I was training with such vigor to really get into the Olympics. And then I discovered this small thing called money, and then I thought, hang on a second, let me try and focus on making money. And being a businessman and entrepreneur and watching Wall Street growing up, that became the dream and aspiration of wearing a double-breasted suit and showing up at an office somewhere. I managed to do that for 3 months and found it to be the most boring, ridiculous, not fitting with my personality at all. And I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. And now it's evolved into a space of being an entrepreneur as well as an author and a trend specialist and a business innovation strategist.
So what were or who were your inspirations at that time when you wanted to be first an Olympic athlete?
Tom Daley.
Tom Daley?
Yes, the UK runner.
Yeah.
I remember watching him, and he was just cleaning up. I think it was the 84 Olympics, I'm not sure. But he was just cleaning up left, right, and center. And I just thought to myself, that's what it is. That's, you want to be the man's man. And so I drove myself for a few years to try and achieve that.
And in your book, you share your story. You said by 28, you were a millionaire. By age 30, you had lost it all.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit more?
Sure. Well, I drove myself really hard to be successful, open and close inverted commas. The basis of success being your bank balance, the car you drive, the business you have, the clothes you wear. And as I really started driving myself to do more, just continuously more, I snapped. It just started all imploding. And by 30, I had to move out of my home, my business, I lost everything, really. My personality even went with that. And it was really based on this idea that I've now realized that there's two ways to show up in the world. The first way is to understand whether you're running away from the darkness, or the second way, running towards the light. Which one are you doing? And intentionally, inside our minds and emotions, we are either doing one of those. On the outside, it looks exactly the same. On the outside, we're acting, we're showing up, we're energetic. But if you're running away from the darkness, and my darkness was poverty, I didn't want to be poor. And running away from that darkness, it caught me. And now I've realized that now I need to run towards the light, which is building something rather than running away from something.
So was that the turning point in your career? Or one of a number of turning points?
Yes. It was the beginning of me trying to figure out what I'm here for. As Mark Twain's saying goes, the two most important days of your life is the day you're born and the day you find out why. And that began the journey towards me understanding why. And about 3 years after the bankruptcy, I began helping small businesses do what I didn't do. That was really the theme I was going with. Well, look how successful I was. Look how I lost everything. These are the things I didn't do. Let's follow this process not to do what I didn't do. And that over the last 7 or 8 years has become a methodology used by the Western Cape government, Siemens, De Beers. I've been teaching it now pretty much around the world. And that methodology was birthed out of my own bankruptcy.
And you call it forever profitable.
That's what I call it. It's a forever profitable methodology that applies a broad way to look at trends, how to adopt them within your organization, whether it's consumer focused or employee focused, and then how to create real implementation that gets people to start changing their behavior.
So how do you analyze trends? How do you decide which ones are important and which ones are not?
Wow, great question. I call it the matrix of trends, because there's a matrix. First and foremost, there's 4 pillars of trends that you need to look at. First, what is the future of your industry doing? Second, what is the future of your consumer's need states? Not your current, but your consumer. Not your current, but your future consumer. Third, what is the trends affecting your employees? How do you need to create an ecosystem that attracts them like bees to honey? And fourth, what technology is just being created that's going to disrupt you. Those 4 pillars are the first place I start. So I break it down into future of your industry, consumer, employee, and technology. That's step 1. Step 2 is that the world is split into 3 mega markets. You get the mature awareness markets that's underpinned by a mega trend called guilt-free consumption. San Francisco, Berlin, pockets of Cape Town, Sydney, a lot of these cities that are mature in the way they shop and they consume are underpinned by guilt-free consumption. These cities that I've mentioned ride a lot of bicycles because that's the way they get around. Then you get another mega market called the emerging market. These are cities like Dubai, Beijing, Kuala Lumpur, Johannesburg. These cities have just started making money. Their mega trend and motivating factor is conspicuous consumption. Just because I can spend, I will spend. What do you do when you go to Dubai? Shop. What do you do when you go to Joburg? Shop. What do you do when you go to Beijing? Shop. It's recognition. It's this need state that they have. And then you get a mega market called the less affluent market, which are the slums and townships around the world. Whether it's Kailicha or a slum in Mexico or India, these people are underpinned by a mega trend called value consumption. They need to drive their rand, peso, or dollar as far as they can, right? So now when you have is these 4 pillars of industry, consumer, employee, and technology, then I further split it into what is your industry doing in mature awareness markets, emerging awareness markets, and less affluent awareness markets. And what are your consumers doing in these 3 markets? What are your employees doing in these 3 markets? What's technology doing in these 3 markets? Now what happens is we create this matrix of understanding where your business can start solving problems based on a very different way of looking at current strategy models. We're really looking at getting as deep into the human factor, into the need states that these consumers have that have got to do with your industry.
So in a way, you're zooming into the biggest opportunities.
Absolutely. I'll tell you what we did recently for one of the largest tour companies in South Africa. They asked me to come in and look at redesigning travel. And after doing this matrix, we realized that the number 1 growing market for holidays is emerging markets like Brazil, China, and India. And their millennials in the next 10 years will be traveling more than any other sector around the world. And they have more disposable income. And they have a trend called access over ownership that affects them. They want to access everything, create experiences. Luxury for them is not an asset, it's an experience, right?
And that's India, China, and
Brazil.
Brazil.
These emerging markets with mass populations of these youngsters really wanting to get out there. Right now they're 20s, but when they're in their 30s, we have a very different situation. They're not getting married. They're not having kids. They're in a very different state as we were. Now we understand the matrix of this consumer. Now we start designing holiday packages in their language, in their way that they want to see technology, and the way they want to be creating this new holiday experience. And then what do we do further? We then understand who we need to hire and what environments we need to create in order to attract the right people to start building those solutions.
So do you work primarily with corporates or entrepreneurs?
Mostly corporates. For just a basic reason that my costing doesn't let entrepreneurs really come and work with me. I started off with entrepreneurs, but I've just found that I enjoy taking bigger organizations on this journey. To have a board of directors that have been doing something the same way for the last 15, 20 years, I call it the ironic rut of success. They've been successful and they need to shift and change. When I get those aha inside those boardrooms en masse, that for me is my highest excitement.
So would you concur nothing fails like success?
Nothing paralyzes you like success.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were talking about your why. What is driving you today?
My why is quite simple. I want to help build courage and boldness in business owners around the world to ask bigger and brighter questions about the future. Many people are victims of the future. Many people are unhappy that things are changing. And my message always is, why are you unhappy when you can't change what's coming? Rather fuel and tool yourself up. And often I get questions after my talks, but what about all the job losses? I said, if you have to stop focusing on that and just focus on how do you prepare. Don't worry about everybody else. What are you going to be doing? And that's the trick here, is that a lot of people give the lip service towards being architects of the future, but they're not really. And so this building courage in people is really what makes me happy.
So it all starts with your mindset.
all of it.
And I believe in your book you start off with the transforming the mindset from victim
To victor.
Okay.
So optimism is required for innovation. That just is, you cannot innovate if you're a pessimist or a realist. And realists in this day and age are most CEOs. Because realists are mostly CAs, engineers, people that are running big organizations today that are risk adverse. They have been trained for stability. They have been trained for understanding what's happened behind us and create an extrapolation plan for the future. They cannot innovate. It's difficult for them to innovate. Their brain hurts when I start talking about these things because they need everything to be proven before they make any action. Because that's what they do. Engineers are there to create structure. CAs are there to make sure a balance sheet balances. Innovation is about no structure and no balance. It's about imbalance. And if you're not experimenting on a continuous basis, if you're not bringing optimism in the room when you're trying to create this courage, you can't even move. So if we don't have the right mindset, and if we do come at it like a victim, we can never change.
So how do you convert the engineering or the financial, the CA CEO into an innovator?
So the trick is really to try and find organizations with leaders that are not CAs and engineers. That's the real trick. And to have the CAs and engineers who are vitally important on the second phase of innovation. Because when we start creating these bold new directives, we need excitement and movement, and then try and figure out how it's actually going to fit in. If we start with how it needs to fit in first before we start the innovation, it doesn't work. So it's very difficult to change somebody's mindset that's been trained like this for 30, 40 years. What we have to do is make sure we choose the right team to begin innovation inside an organization. And I often have this discussion with boardrooms. It's like, with all respect, CIOs and CFOs, can you just come in on the next phase of the innovation? No disrespect. You're very valid. But when I'm trying to create these new, bold, and courageous, and almost audacious innovations, we don't need people hamstringing us. So it's not about changing, but just changing the team, not the person.
Now, let's talk about leadership. In your view, what does the future of leadership mean?
Two things leaders of the future need to do. And it's all based on this one premise. The smartest person in the room is the person with a connection to the internet and a smartphone. You don't need to be smart when it comes to becoming a leader. You need two very key skill sets. This is from my research. I do a talk called The Future of Leadership. So I researched it and and I found that, the leaders of the future need two things. One, huge amounts of empathy. The ability to get people that are speaking on digital platforms at a massive rate and losing human interaction at a massive rate. How do you bring empathy into a room where you create collaboration and trust and communication? So it's really about the environment that you're creating for these boffins and brains to start innovating. That's step one. Step two, you need not only understand technology, you need to become the driver of technology. So instead of you waiting for somebody to direct what sort of technology you should be doing, you should be the one saying, this is the technology we're going towards, this is the environment I'm creating, and let them create it. So for me, leadership is moving away from this top-down scenario to a managing of energy scenario.
Now, when you speak to future leaders, what is it you tell them they should concern themselves to future-proof their career, if that is possible?
So for me, it's about learning new skills on an ongoing basis. I call it forever education. And as a leader, first and foremost, are you taking lead of what new things you're learning? And if you're not doing that on its own, already you're going to stop being a leader. So one, it's flexibility and agility. It's like, as a leader, how are you shifting how you're bringing something to the table? How are you shifting and understanding what the next AI and robotics merger and convergence happens to your business? So if you're not leading that understanding and bringing that knowledge into the room and creating the environment, you're not a leader.
And talking about technologies, which technologies do you anticipate will drive the leadership of the future?
Well, for me, the first thing right now we're looking at is AI. I mean, AI without doubt is now starting to wipe out lawyers, surgeons, accountants, let alone drivers and till packers. AI is by far the most exciting, and obviously some people call it scary, but by far the most exciting scenario around what is going to be impacting leadership and how we're going to move away from operational based leadership to really about this sort of very creative, emotionally intelligent leadership that we need to start moving towards.
And what is your view on the impact of jobs? Will you be able to create new jobs, more jobs, different jobs?
So let's just first step back a section and understand that jobs, the understanding of we need to be working from 9 to 5 is an industrial revolution scenario. It's something we've learned. And before the industrial revolution, there was no 9 to 5. The industrial revolution created this idea that we need to be performing at this sort of rate, right? So what is a job and what is work is the first thing we need to start unlearning. I have the slide I use in my talk. It says, the knowledgeable man has to learn something new every day, but the wise man has to unlearn something new every day. And as you start moving in, it's not only the constructs of are we losing jobs, is what is a job? Why did we think we had to go work for 8 or 10 or 15 hours a day? Because that's what we've been learned or taught, okay? So let's just bank that. Let's just then touch on something called technological socialism. This idea that technology is now going to start looking after humanity. Things are becoming cheaper. Things are starting to move much faster. The sharing economy is now becoming a real thing in many parts of the world. This idea that we need a lot is starting to fall away. This idea that access over ownership, this idea that I don't need an asset, I just need to use it when I need to use it, shows that we need less. That's the first thing. The second thing for me is, as we start moving into this future, as these new ideas start coming, if we don't need so much, why do we need to be working the same hours that we always needed? So, I mean, I'm a futurist, so I'm talking about 10, 15 years, and this makes a lot of people very uncomfortable because they say to me, well, I've got to pay mortgage next year, and next month, and this month. And so that's real, that's now. But this exponential future we're moving in towards, it's a paradigm shift. It's not a question shift, it's a paradigm shift where when you get free internet, which is going to be here in the next 5 to 7 years, you have free communication. Next 10 years, free transportation. Bill Gates and his energy coalition is now building an idea around free energy for everybody, a $40 billion fund. This is around the corner. Now, we need to be thinking in those sort of terms, and that's my job, is about curating the future and bringing it into boardrooms and bite-sized sections so we can start making these critical decisions. So yes, jobs will be lost, many of them, and I say thank God, because we've actually been following a pattern that's outdated. There's no need to be sitting in traffic for 45 minutes in the morning to get to a job you most probably don't like, to then sit back into the traffic for 45 minutes, to repeat this for 11 months of the year, to go on holiday to a busy place. What is that? Is that real? Is that slavery? But it's been indoctrination. And it's this paradigm shift we need to be taking around it.
Now, John, when it comes to social media, which platforms do you suggest leaders should use?
All of them. All of them. The truth is that we consume more social media today than ever before, and the stats look like it's not ending. And so what you need to be doing as a leader, and I think everybody is now becoming a brand. My name is the brand. That's how I'm sitting here with you. And for me, it's about understanding, one, what is your flavor? What turns you on? What is the thing that makes you the most excited? What is that? When you figure that out, that becomes your teaching tool. That's something that you need to now share with the world. And this is Gary Vaynerchuk's jab, 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 right hook book, which is all about give, 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 and then ask for a sale. I'm even dropping that ask for a sale. Just give, give, give. The sales come. And so if you're not using social media and you're not touching on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn on a daily, weekly basis, sharing what makes you most excited, you're not teaching anybody anything and you're not adding any value. And then what happens to people like that is they complain. But if you're adding value, what people then start doing is they start pulling you into their lives. Businesses get hold of me because they've seen a video of mine. You asked me to be here because you read a book of mine. All I'm doing is adding the value into the world of my highest excitement. Now, everybody has an highest excitement. But if we have to unlearn the aspect of what makes logical sense for me to do or what makes me highest excited, those two become two different, very different motivating factors. And so for me, it's about find your highest excitement, use social media to teach the world, and then look at how abundance arrives in your life.
Now, John, can you maybe share a success story or two where you helped the leader or leadership team to move into the future and maybe disrupt the industry, transform the industry?
I'll give you two. I'm not going to name any names, but they might be obvious, but anyway. The world's largest diamond mine. So we won't name who they are. So they asked me to come and look at the future of diamonds. And I don't know how they've implemented our strategy, but after 2 days of workshops with the leadership team, we realized the question was wrong. And this is really where my prowess is. It's questions. The implementation of it, I get bored. It's just my personality and what I am. They said to me, John, we need to understand the future of diamonds. So we did the research, we went in with my team, we did the whole process, and we realized that the question was wrong. The question is, what is the future of luxury? Not the future of diamonds. Because 35% of the human population right now, and it's growing that number, see diamonds as a swear word. Why do I need a diamond? That's most probably a blood diamond. You're ruining the earth doing this. And who the hell cares that I got a 80,000 rand thing on my finger? And guess what? I can't even wear it because it might get stolen. So I'm just going to put it in the safe. And in fact, today, you can make diamonds for a fraction of the price and nobody can tell the difference. So now all of a sudden, 35% of the population that used to buy from you don't see you as a luxury item. Now we have this opportunity to pivot the business, to start becoming, and what is the new luxury? Experience. So how do we now become an experience business to be in line with what our consumers' real needs are? That's one example.
Okay.
A second example.
Yeah.
There's a material in South Africa called shweshwe, which has been made in South Africa for 70 to 80 years. It's a traditional material that we see a lot of the mamas wear around the country. And it's a very large business, 500 million rand around there. They called me in because their business started plateauing. And what had happened is that China and Pakistan were starting to bring in very similar fabrics for a fraction of the price. And we went in and we thought that what we needed to do was change the brand's representation inside the retail stores. I mean, they have 600 retail stores around the country, mostly in less affluent areas selling this material. And we realized that that wasn't what we were supposed to do. We realized that the mamas that were actually buying the material from us, 50,000 of them a week, and only on Mondays, which is the most unbelievable stat. Yeah, exactly.
Why is
only
it?
on Mondays.
Why is it?
Because they spend Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday sewing the material, because what they are not end users, they're micro entrepreneurs. They have built little businesses from buying this material and making traditional dresses for their friends and community. When we figured this out, we realized that sales isn't where we should be focusing at all. We should become an education business. The question changed from how much could we sell to how many could we educate to become better entrepreneurs. So we ran a countrywide Shweshwepreneur 10-step program of how we could get them to start selling their products with the Tupperware style selling model. And we understood that community-based sales in poorer areas around the world are all based on community sales. And the way you run the Tupperware style party was what these ladies needed to start doing. Rather than taking one or two dresses and taking them to the taxi ranks and trying to sell them there, their sales process was broken. Their costings were broken. What they were making wasn't really innovative. So we taught them a whole new way of making clothes, slippers, cushion pillows, all these things that were from 10 Rand to 30 or 40 Rand, the quick buys. And then we made dresses that were between 600 and 1,000 Rand. And so what they would do is we taught them how to use WhatsApp. We taught them how to use Facebook groups, and we then went and did a whole country tour of how to educate our mamas to become better Shweshwepreneurs. The question changed from how much can we sell to how many can we educate.
So am I right in saying that part of what you do is helping companies, leaders, to ask the right question?
That's all it is. Because if we're aiming in the wrong direction, you could be swimming up the wrong river. And this diamond business, if they were just looking at the future of diamonds, they would look at how they can make retail better, how to design another ring, another pinch. That's not where the world's going. And Mercedes-Benz has now announced that they are now moving directly in for the Tesla Powerwall business. Why? Because Mercedes-Benz understands the future of transportation is about an electric car that needs to be powered by solar roof. So now if Mercedes-Benz wants to become integrated into your life, they need to swap businesses, business models, and become not only car manufacturers, but also power suppliers. This is the question they need to be doing. And this is the question they've started asking.
So, John, when you speak to leaders, which are the role models that you recommend one should study, maybe learn from?
The leaders that suffer from something called reality distortion disorder. The leaders that really don't care what the reality is saying, but what they want to be doing. Elon Musk is a reality distortion disorder sufferer. He really doesn't care what everybody else is thinking. He really doesn't. He's irreverent to them. And I feel that leaders need to be both charismatic and irreverent. Charismatic to move people, but irreverent to what's going on out in their market according to their competition or according to their own, even their own capabilities. Because Elon Musk creates businesses that are nowhere near his capabilities. He's just trying anything that the consumer needs. And we look at these sort of leaders and they're growing around the world because these are the leaders that are changing the way we live our lives and the expectations we have. And if leaders aren't able to be bold like an Elon Musk, you're not leading in an exciting organization then. It's just the same old that you copy and paste, copy and paste. So there's many different examples. Right now I can only think of Elon Musk because I speak about him a lot. And he's really on the poster child of innovation at the moment, just what Steve Jobs was, last few decades. And these people have become moonshotters or Mars shotters, as Elon Musk is now. So that's really where I focus on.
Well, you coined the term moonshotters, and I believe you're building a movement. Am I right? You're building a moonshotters movement.
Well, I don't know if I'm really building a movement purposefully. I think what's happening is that the book is really doing well. I'm now starting to run workshops around the country for it. And a lot of organizations are asking me to come and create moonshot environments for people to start making these sort of decisions. I think what's really happened is that movements happen on their own. When people buy into the potential that they have and they've given a tool set of how to achieve that potential, a movement starts. So I haven't set out to create that. But the fact that it is moving in that direction makes me so very happy because I really believe as individuals today, we have the same power and the same ability as governments and organizations have had in the past. We have access to more information today with an internet connection than the President of America did in 1994. 94. So, what are we doing with this information? How are we going about having access to 3.7 billion people right now on the internet? How big is our question? And we get stuck in this idea that my career, my little business, maybe I need to buy this other little business. We're just not thinking moonshotting enough.
So, John, where can people get hold of you? Where should they follow you?
I would love them to follow me everywhere on all social media fronts. On my website, johnsanei.com, and Instagram, on Facebook, on LinkedIn. I'm on all of them. I'm very active on all of them. I'm continuously making vlogs. I'm a much better speaker than a writer. So I like to share my thinking around videos. And it's amazing. And I always suggest and I always end off a lot of my vlogs with, when are you all going to start making vlogs? Because the truth is that by 2020, the stats are showing that 80% of the internet will be consumed via video. So if you're not sharing on these platforms, you're not getting your message out there. So please follow me on all those social medias. And on my website, there's a button there for joining my Ramblings newsletter. And I send out a video or just a thought once a week. And I love sharing that. And if I'm doing any workshops or any talks open to the public, then I invite people through that.
Well, last but not least, John, is there one piece of advice that you would really like future leaders to embrace and implement in their own lives?
Yes. Stop doing brainstorming sessions. They're from 1990 Futsec. Start doing question storming sessions. That's the magic. The more time we spend on asking the right question, as Einstein said, if I was given 20 minutes to come up with a solution, I'd spend 19 minutes devising the question and 1 minute answering it. That's my advice.
Well, John, thank you so much. You're a great inspiration. You're building the future. In fact, you're helping us to master the future. So thank you so much. All the best.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And good luck.
Thank you.
You're a blessing.
Thank you so much.